The assignment sheet called her Diplomatic Freight Category 7. I stared at that line for a long time. I was standing in Captain Reva Tull's narrow operations corridor on the cargo hauler Valdrin's Grace, 3 hours out of Kethis Yard. The dock grease still drying on my boot soles, holding a single laminated work order that outlined my duties for the next 87 days. Most of it was standard security rotation, cargo bay checks at 6-hour intervals, access log audits, 1 fire drill per week, biometric seal verification on the deep freeze containers. I'd done 2 long hauls before. I knew the rhythm. Then there was that line at the bottom. Security personnel will maintain a once-daily welfare check on Transit Cabin 7, Housing Diplomatic Freight, Category 7, consigned under Vethany Tessavar Trade Accord, Clause 18b. No contact beyond essential welfare confirmation required. Maintain distance. Log condition as satisfactory or requiring attention. Category 7. I'd never heard the classification before. I pulled up the ship's registry on the corridor terminal. Category 7. Living diplomatic goods. Sentient beings transported as terms of treaty. That twice. Then I folded the work order and put it in my vest pocket and went to find the galley, because I needed coffee before I decided how I felt about any of it. The galley was loud with the end-of-launch noise. Engineers arguing about fuel, ratios, the cook banging pots in the tight alcove she called her kitchen, 2 of the cargo handlers playing a card game on an upturned crate. I poured a mug and leaned against the wall and listened to the ship settle into its first FTL stretch, that deep harmonic hum that always reminded me of a chord played on an instrument too large to see. Duco, the senior cargo handler, looked up from his cards. He was 40-something, thick in the shoulders, with a face that had been in weather for too many years. "You get the Cat 7 assignment," he said. I did. Easy money. He tossed a card down. "They're not going to make trouble. Call says 1 check a day, 60 seconds at the door, you log satisfactory and move on." "What is she?" I said. "Not it. I'd already decided." Duco shrugged. "Vethany High Caste. Some princess. Part of the accord terms. Tessavar colony needed a political concession. Vethany Council offered her up for the magistrate's household. Standard practice for them, apparently. She's being delivered to a household. To a magistrate. It's a marriage clause." He watched me for a reaction, and when he didn't get the one he was looking for, he added, "They do it. They've been doing it for 400 years. Not our business." I drank my coffee. 60 seconds, he said again. "Door check. Log. Done." I said nothing. I went to Cabin 7 that first evening, at the end of my watch rotation, carrying the access tablet and my log stylus. The cabin was at the aft end of Bay Corridor, away from the crew quarters, which I suspected was not accidental. The door was plain gray bulkhead with a coded lock and a small status panel beside it. The panel showed interior temperature nominal, atmospheric mix stable, occupant biometric steady. I knocked, nothing. I knocked again, 1 firm tap, the lock panel blinked. And after a moment, the door opened about 4 centimeters. Not enough to see much. Thin line of the cabin's interior light fell across the corridor floor. I could see one eye, pale gray, nearly silver, watching me with the flat attention of someone who has learned not to show what they're thinking. "Welfare check," I said. "Standard ship protocol. Just need to confirm you're well." The eye didn't blink. "You don't have to open the door wider," I said. "I just need a verbal response. Gesture. Something I can log." A pause, then in accented standard Terran, carefully enunciated, as though she'd learned it from recordings rather than conversation, she said, "I am well." "Good," I said. I made a note on the tablet. He didn't move. "Is there anything you need? Water, food, temperature adjustment?" The eye narrowed slightly. "I mean it," I said. "I'm the security rotation. If the cabin supply needs restocking, that goes through me. You just have to say." Another pause. Longer this time. "Water," she said. "The tank by the bunk cycle's warm. I would prefer it cooler. I'll put in the request tonight. Should be adjusted by morning." She said nothing. "My name is Tomas Kell," I said. "I'll be doing this check every day at around this hour, give or take. If you need anything between checks, the cabin intercom connects to my station." Still nothing. I turned to go. "They do not usually introduce themselves." Her voice was quiet, precise, like a person choosing words that aren't their native ones. "I know," I said. I didn't elaborate. I just wrote satisfactory on the log line and went back to my station. The water tank was adjusted by morning. I checked the maintenance ticket at first light to make sure. The Valdrin's Grace was not a luxury vessel. She was a mid-tonnage hauler, with a crew of 11, including me, built for reliability over comfort, the kind of ship where the walls sweat condensation in the deep haul stretches, and you learn to wedge a cloth under your bunk rail to stop it rattling. I'd taken the posting because the rate was good, and the hauler company had a decent safety record, because I expected 87 days of pleasant company. The crew were fine, functional, the kind of people you find on cargo runs, competent, unsentimental, interested in getting from one port to the next without incident. Duco I've already described. There was Jessica the engineer, spoke mainly in technical assessments, and could fix anything with a conduit coupler and patience. The cook, Marin, made food that was nutritious, if not inspired, and considered any praise of her cooking a personal intrusion. Captain Tull ran a tight schedule and a loose interpersonal culture, meaning she cared deeply about the ship, and less about whether her crew liked each other. None of them went near cabin 7 unless they had to. I noticed this on day 3, when I walked past the cabin with a supply crate for the adjacent hold and saw that the tray of rations left outside the door that morning hadn't been moved. I stopped. I checked the intercom panel. I pressed the call button. Silence then. Yes. Morning rations are still outside the door. A pause. I am aware. Have you eaten today? A longer pause. The tray is left in the corridor. There are footsteps. People pass. I do not wish to open the door while they are there. I stood very still for a moment. If you open the door in the next 2 minutes, I said, there's no one in this corridor but me, and I'll be looking the other way. Turned my back to the door. I heard it open. I heard the tray scrape quietly across the deck plating. I heard it close. I stood there for another minute before I walked on. The next morning I moved the tray delivery to a 4-3D, the corridor's quietest hour. I didn't mention it to anyone. I just adjusted the galley log and wrote a note for Marin that the Cat 7 delivery should happen before first. Tation. Marin gave me a look that contained several opinions she didn't voice, and then she changed the schedule without comment. On day 7, I brought an extra water container to the door check. Cold from the galley cooler, I knocked. The door opened its usual 4 centimeters. Name first, I said, holding up the container so she could see it. Shh. I've been doing these checks for a week, and I've been logging your condition every day without knowing what to call you. I know you're Vithani, high caste. I know you're being transported under the Accord. I don't know your name. The pale gray eye looked at the water container. Then it looked at me. Sorrel, she said. Sorrel Dunn. Second daughter of the Dunn house, 9th succession. Thomas Cale, I said. Even though I'd told her on day 1. Security rotation. Third posting on this class of hauler. The door opened a little wider. Maybe 7 centimeters. Now I could see more of her face. Ochre rust skin with the warm undertone that Vethani high caste tended to carry. Short, auburn dark locks pulled back from her forehead. That silver gray eye, and the other beside it, both watching me with the same careful attention. I held out the water container. The galley cooler runs colder than the cabin tank. You might prefer it. She took it. Her hand came through the gap, long-fingered, steady, and she took it without hesitation. Told me she'd decided something about me in the last week, even if I couldn't have said what. Thank you, Thomas Cale, she said. Thomas is fine, said. How are you finding the cabin? Small. She said it without complaint as a plain fact. They're all small on this class. Crew quarters are the same size, more or less. I did not expect equal treatment, she said. Another plain fact. I didn't say anything to that, because I didn't know how to say what I thought without it sounding like a speech. I just logged her condition as satisfactory and made a note. Supply preference. Cold water from galley cooler. Deliver with morning rations. I'll check in tomorrow, I said. I will be here, she said, with a dry inflection that might have been the dry thing you say when you have nowhere else to go. I was still thinking about that tone as I walked back to my station. On day 12, Duco cornered me in the cargo bay. Captain wants to know why the Cat 7 supply schedule changed, he said. Cabin occupant requested quiet delivery time. It's a comfort accommodation. Standard protocol allows it. It's not standard protocol. It's within my discretion under the welfare check mandate. I said. Clause 18 Bob. Says welfare confirmation, it doesn't define the method. Duco looked at me for a long moment. He wasn't hostile exactly. Just measuring, you're making it complicated, he said. 60 seconds. Log. Done. I'm doing my job, I said. Occupant is compliant. Settled. No incidents. That's good for the hall. He shrugged and walked away. I went back to my work. I didn't feel good about the conversation. I didn't feel bad about it either. There's a kind of steadiness you find in doing the thing you know is right. When someone else would rather you didn't, not her, just resistant. Like ballast. Day 15. I knocked on cabin 7 and she opened the door to its full width for the first time. It startled me. I didn't show it, but it did. She was standing in the doorway in a plain gray tunic and loose trousers that were clearly ship issue, the kind pulled from the emergency textile locker, not her own clothes. Her locks were loose around her face, and she was holding the empty water container from the day before. I wanted to return it, she said. I can bring a new one each day. You don't have to return them. It is wasteful not to. She held it out to me. I took it. Our hands were both on the container for a moment before I let her release it. Not intentional, just the ordinary physics of passing something, and she looked down at it as though recalibrating something. May I ask you something? She said. Yes. Why do you knock? I thought about that. Because it's a door, I said, and someone's on the other side of it. She was quiet for a moment. The convoy guards at the yard didn't knock, she said. The harbor registrar at Kethis didn't knock. Crew who delivered my initial supply kit didn't knock. I know, so why do you? I just told you, I said, because it's a door. And you're on the other side. She studied me in a way that made me feel like I was a text she was reading slowly, making sure she understood it correctly. You're unusual, Tomas KL, she said. My family would agree, I said. Can I bring you anything else with tomorrow's water? No. A pause. Yes. Do you have anything to read? I brought her 3 data chips the next morning, 2 collection novels from my own kit, 1 navigation reference manual I thought might bore anyone to a comfortable sleep if needed. She took all 3 without comment. 6 days later, she returned the navigation manual and kept the novels. I brought 2 more. The days on a long haul develop their own sediment. You start to know the sound the ship makes in each FTL phase, the particular clank of the starboard cooling loop in hours 3 and 7, the way the mess table vibrates slightly when Jessica runs diagnostics on the secondary drive. You start to know when the cook is in a bad mood by the smell of what she's making. Good moods produce something with actual spices. Bad moods produced a protein compound that tasted like it had been designed by committee. I knew these things, and over the weeks I came to know something else. The sound of Sorel Dunn's door opening wider by increments. By day 20, it was open enough that we could stand in the doorway and talk, which we did for longer than 60 seconds, which I logged as welfare check complete. No notation needed, because there was no regulation that said welfare checks had to be short. By day 25, she was leaning against the door frame when I arrived, which I understood to mean she'd been listening for my footsteps. We talked about the ship. She'd never been on a hauler, and she was curious about the systems in the way that someone with a technical education gets curious, asking the second-order question after I answered the first one. She asked why FTL produced the harmonic hum rather than silence, and when I said I didn't know exactly, she said she'd read in the navigation manual that it was the field generator's interaction with residual background radiation, and she wanted to know if that was actually measurable or just theoretical. I said I'd ask Jessica. Jessica, surprised to be asked, pulled up her logs and confirmed it was measurable, and then gave me 3 minutes of detailed data that I relayed the next evening. Sorel listened to all of it and then said, "Tell her the baseline reading in the 3rd FTL phase is higher than in the 1st. Ask her if that's normal." I relayed that too. Jessica went quiet for a moment, then pulled something up, then said, with a note of genuine interest she rarely showed, "She's right, and I don't know why. Tell her I'll look into it." After that, Jessica started leaving technical notes in the daily supply tray. I didn't mention it to anyone. Day 31. Was doing a cargo bay check when Duso found me again. And this time his expression was different, more guarded. "Captain wants to talk to you," he said. I followed him to the operations corridor. Captain Toll was at her desk with the manifest open. She wasn't looking at it when I came in. She was looking at the wall. "Kale," she said. "Sit down." I sat. "I've had a communication from the Tessevar liaison," she said. "He's requesting a status report on the Category 7 passenger. He wants to know if she's eating, if she's communicating, and whether she's showing any signs of non-compliance." I kept my face still. "She's eating. She's communicating with me during welfare checks. She's not non-compliant." He specifically asked whether she'd been interacting with crew beyond what the protocol requires. She's been exchanging technical questions with the engineer. Toll's jaw moved slightly. "Kale, the welfare mandate says I'm responsible for her condition. Her condition is good. Engaged mind, regular meals, sleep pattern stable." I paused. "What exactly does non-compliance mean in this context?" Tull looked at me finally. She had the expression of a person who has seen something coming for a while and is tired of watching it arrive. "It means she won't be difficult when the ship arrives at Tessevar. It means the transfer to the magistrate's household goes smoothly." I said nothing. "I'm not asking you to stop doing welfare checks," Tull said. "I'm telling you that the liaison is paying attention to this, and I don't want complications at the dock." "She hasn't done anything wrong," I said. "I didn't say she had. Protocol doesn't restrict my method. It says welfare check. I've been doing welfare checks." "KL." Tull's voice was tired, not unkind. "I know what you've been doing, and I understand why. But she's Category 7 under the Accord, and the Accord has teeth. When we dock, the liaison takes custody. That's the contract." I stood up. "Yes, Captain," I said, because I didn't have anything else to say that would fit inside the boundaries of that conversation. I walked back to my station. I sat down. I thought for a long time about the difference between the thing you can change and the thing you can't, and whether knowing the difference is wisdom or just defeat. The thing about long hauls is that they remove most of the ordinary noise a life makes. There's no commute, no errands, no social obligation to manage, no roster of small decisions filling the hours. What's left is the ship, and the work and the people in the ship, and whatever you brought with you, in terms of what you actually think about things. I had spent 2 previous long hauls, learning things about myself I hadn't particularly wanted to know, that I had more patience than I'd credited myself with, and less talent for indifference than I'd assumed, that I could do a thing correctly for the right reasons and still wish the situation had been different. This was that situation again, only more so. I'd been in the security trade for 23 years, 2 decades of cargo manifests and access, logs and gate protocols, of being the person responsible for the safe transit of things that couldn't be lost. I'd guarded pharmaceutical shipments and diplomatic pouches and once, memorably, 300 kilograms of irreplaceable archaeological artifacts from a dead civilization's homeworld, transported under a cultural repatriation clause I'd read 3 times to make sure I understood what was in my care. I understood care. I understood the weight of it. What I hadn't understood, until the Valdrin's grace, was how different that weight felt when the thing in your care understood you were carrying it. I didn't have an answer. I went and knocked on cabin 7. She opened the door. She looked at my face. "Something happened," she said. "The liaison checked in," I said. "He wanted to know if you were being compliant." She absorbed that. Her expression didn't change on the surface. Something behind the gray eyes shifted. Not fear, not exactly. Something older than fear. The recognition of a familiar weight resettling. "And what did you tell them?" "The truth, that you're well, that you've been no trouble, that your condition is good." "The useful truth," she said. "The version that doesn't cause problems." "Yes," I said. I didn't apologize for it. I don't think she wanted me to. "Thomas," she said. And it was the first time she'd used just my first name, not the full Tomas Kale that she'd been using like a fixed coordinate. I know. What happens at Tessevar. I knew when I was told I was being sent. I don't have illusions about it." "I know," I said. "You don't have to feel responsible. I know that too." She watched me. "But you do anyway." I didn't answer. She looked away, down at the floor of the corridor, and then back up at me. "Bring me another novel tomorrow," she said. Something long. Brought her the longest one I had. 612 pages. She read it in 8 days, day 44. I was eating in the mess when Duco sat across from me. which he rarely did when it was just the two of us. "You're spending more than 60 seconds, he said. "I know, every night. I know." He ate for a moment. "I'm not going to tell the captain," he said. "I want you to know that." I looked up. "I've done 2 Accord transports," he said. "Long time ago on a different hauler. Different category, but same basic situation. That is food. I did 60 seconds every time. Bulldog satisfactory. Moved on." He shrugged. But it was the kind of shrug that means the opposite of indifference. Never sat well. I didn't say anything. "What you're doing isn't going to change the outcome," he said. "I know. So why?" I thought about it. "Because she knows her name," I said. "And no one on this ship has used it. That seems wrong." Duco looked at me for a long time. Then he picked up his tray and stood. "Going to make things difficult for yourself," he said. "At the dock, the liaison is a piece of work. I expect he is." He walked away. 57. FTL Phase 4. The ship was at its quietest, the long coast between jump legs. And I was at my station running the midnight log, when the intercom light on panel 7 blinked. I pressed the connect key. "Thomas." Voice was low, careful, Sorel. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." A pause. I wanted to talk. "Is that permitted at this hour?" "It's permitted whenever you want." Another pause. In the background I could hear the harmonic hum. Field generator's conversation with background radiation. That Jessica had been quietly measuring ever since I passed along the observation. "I've been thinking about what comes after Tessavar," she said. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't want to say something hollow. "Tell me about the magistrate," she said. "I don't know much." The liaison gave the captain a brief. "I haven't seen it." "He's 73, she said. "He has 3 prior wives. 2 died of natural causes. 1 returned to her homeworld under a dissolution clause when the Accord term expired. He has a large household on the colony's primary landmass. He trades in transit rights. He is, according to the Accord language, a man of standing and beneficial alliance." She said all of this in the same tone she used to describe technical specifications. Precise, uninflected. "How old are you?" I said. Been uncertain about asking for weeks. 26, she said, by Terran calculation. I let the silence sit for a moment. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," I told her. "You're not supposed to say anything. I wasn't asking you to fix it. I wanted to say it out loud. To someone who would hear it." "I hear it," I said. "I know you do." A pause, that's why I called. We stayed on the intercom for another hour, not talking much, just connected. She read me a section from one of the novels. I told her about the ship I'd grown up near, a dry dock repair facility on the coast of a southern continent, where I'd spent my childhood watching mechanics work and learning to love the logic of things that could be understood. She asked questions. I answered them. She wanted to know what it was like to grow up near water, whether the coast smelled like she'd read it did in Terran fiction. I told her it depended on the coast. Some coasts smelled like salt and clean distance. Others smelled like oil and working vessels, and the particular mineral quality of exposed rock at low tide. She was quiet for a moment, and then said that Vethani home coast was a cold basalt cliffs and a white brine that you could taste in the back of your for days after leaving, and that she hadn't been there in 4 years, and that she sometimes thought the smell was the specific thing she missed most. Not the house, not the people, but the air. I didn't say anything for a while after that. There wasn't anything to say that would have made it smaller or larger than it was. When she said, "Good night," her voice had the quality of a door, closing gently rather than shutting. I sat at my station in the quiet of FTL Phase 4 and felt something settle in my chest, not happiness exactly, but the kind of clarity you get when you know exactly where you stand and what you believe, even when the situation around you is wrong. Day 70. We were 18 days out from Tessavar. I had started to notice things I hadn't noticed before, or hadn't let myself notice. The way her voice changed when she talked about the Vethani coast where her family house sat, the way she said, "home," with a specific weight that wasn't longing and wasn't grief, just acknowledgement. The way she'd started to open the door before I knocked, because she heard my footsteps. I had also started to notice the way the crew had quietly shifted. Marin left slightly better food in the supply tray than she strictly had to. Jessica had begun sending technical notes with the daily delivery, 3 or 4 lines of dense data, and had started receiving them back, with corrections or follow-up questions, in Sorayel's careful handwriting. Duco had taken to leaving the B corridor clear in the evening without anyone asking. None of them said anything about it. They didn't need to. It's a specific thing, the quiet consensus of a ship's crew. You can't declare it or organize it. It just happens. Way tides happen. Because the conditions were there, and because people, given the chance, tend toward decent. I wasn't falling apart over it. I want to be clear about that. I was 52 years old, twice divorced, deeply familiar with the variety of ways a person can feel something real and have no useful action available. I knew what the situation was. I knew the Accord's teeth. I knew what happened at Tessavar. But I knocked on cabin 7 every night and used her name and brought her cold water, and listened, and I told myself that was enough. On day 70, she said, "Tell me something about how the docking procedure works." At Tessavar, yes, I described it. The approach vector, the communication with the Port Authority, the liaisons boarding, the review of the cargo manifest, in which she would be listed, the transfer of custody documentation. "Who signs the transfer?" she said. "Captain, the liaison, and the receiving party. In this case, a representative of the magistrate's household, and the accord clause that governs the transfer. Do you know which one? 18Y. A pause. Long enough that I started to wonder if the connection had dropped. "Thomas," she said, "I want you to look something up for me. In the accord documentation, I know the ship has a legal reference library. Most haulers do, for customs declarations. What am I looking for?" "The Vithani Right of Declaration," she said. "Clause 41, subsection 7. I looked it up that night. I read it twice, then a third time. The Vithani Right of Declaration, Clause 41.7, stated the following. A Vithani national transferred under treaty clause to a receiving party retains, under all circumstances, right of witnessed companion declaration. This right, exercised in the presence of a neutral party, designated by the transferring vessel prior to docking, supersedes the original receiving party designation. The witnessed companion must be a sentient being of legal majority who has, in the preceding 60 days, demonstrated constant, voluntary, uncoerced welfare engagement with the transferring individual. The declaration, once spoken, requires confirmation from the witnessed companion. Upon confirmation, the original transfer clause is dissolved, and the witnessed companion assumes the status of designated contact and companion of record for the duration of any subsequent legal proceedings. The original receiving party retains no claim. I sat with this for a long time. I read the definition of witnessed companion 3 more times. Then I knocked on panel 7's intercom. She answered immediately. "You read it," she said. I read it. "I've known about it since I was 12, she said. "My mother told me." She said, "Remember this clause, because it exists for a reason. I've known it was there. I just never. I needed to know if there was a candidate, someone who qualified, someone who had, in the preceding 60 days, demonstrated consistent, voluntary, uncoerced." "I know what the text says," I said. My voice was steady, but something underneath it wasn't. "I'm not asking you to save me," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not asking you to upend your life out of obligation or pity. I am asking whether you—" She stopped. The pause was long. "I'm asking whether the person you've been for the last 70 days is a person who would confirm this declaration freely, because he wanted to, not because the protocol required it." The harmonic hum filled the silence. "It would cause problems," I said finally. "The liaison, the magistrate, the accord parties." "Yes, it would mean legal proceedings. Extended." "Yes. You'd be in a contested status for potentially years while the claim was adjudicated." "Yes, and you know this." "I know this." I let out a long, slow breath. "Sorel," I said, "when we dock at Tessavar, if you speak the declaration, in the presence of the captain as neutral party." "Yes, I will confirm it," I said, without hesitation, freely, because I want to. The silence on the other end of the intercom had a quality I hadn't heard before. Not absence, but fullness. The way a room sounds when someone in it stops holding their breath. "Thank you, Tomas," she said. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "The liaison is going to be extremely unpleasant about this. I imagine so. And we have 18 days before the dock. There's time to change your mind." "I won't." "I know," I said. "I won't, either. Those last 18 days were strange and clear. I kept doing my welfare checks. I kept bringing cold water. We kept talking through the corridor doorway, her leaning in the frame, me standing in the passage. And there was something different about all of it, now. Not more, exactly, but more acknowledged. The shape of what was between us had been given a name, and names have weight. I told Duco on day 80. I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he'd been honest with me. And that deserved honesty back. He looked at me across the mess table for a long time. The liaison is going to be a problem, he said. Yes, the Accord Party could contest it for years. Yes. Have you read the clause? The definition of witnessed companion is actually quite specific about the 60-day criterion. I've read it 4 times. He was quiet. Do you qualify under the definition? Every day, voluntary, uncoerced, consistent. I met his eyes. 70 days. Another silence. He ate a few bites. I'll testify to the welfare schedule if it helps, he said. I can confirm the uncoerced standard. I saw the whole thing. I looked at him. He shrugged. The shrug that meant the opposite of indifference. Nobody should be shipped like cargo, he said. I told you this never sat well. Day 87, Tesvar approach. The liaison came aboard at the docking corridor, and he was exactly what Duco had warned me about. A compact, well-dressed, professionally unpleasant man named Crador Vess who managed to convey displeasure through the geometry of his posture, even before he spoke. He had the Accord documentation in a neat portfolio, and an expression that suggested he'd done this many times, and found inefficiency personally offensive. Captain Tull met him in the forward corridor. I stood beside her, which was my right as the assigned welfare officer. Crador Vess looked at me once, and then focused on the captain. Transfer procedure is straightforward, he said. We'll need the manifest signature, the condition log, and the occupant brought to the transfer bay within. I'm invoking the right of declaration. It wasn't me who said it. It was Sorrel. She had come out of cabin 7 while we were talking. I hadn't told her the exact moment the liaison boarded. She'd judged it. Self. She was standing in the B corridor in her own clothes now. A dark formal tunic with the high collar that Vithani dress used for occasions. Cloaks pulled back, her gray eyes steady. The corridor went very quiet. Crador Vess turned slowly. Expression went through several changes in quick succession. Surprise, recalculation, and then a rigid hardening that I recognized as professional anger finding its controlled shape. The right of declaration, he said, requires a qualifying witnessed companion. I have one, she said. She looked at me, not asking. Naming Crador Vess looked at me too. His expression suggested he had rapidly assessed me and found the assessment unsatisfactory. The qualifying period, he began. 87 days, I said. Voluntary welfare engagement, daily, uncoerced, logged in the ship's security record. The log dates and times are there if you want to pull them. You're a security guard. I'm the assigned welfare officer. The Accord recognizes any sentient being of legal majority. His jaw tightened. This will be contested. That's your right, I said. The clause is explicit that a contest doesn't invalidate the declaration. It only initiates proceedings. Captain Tull, I noticed, had not said anything since Sorrel had appeared. She was watching all of this with the expression of someone who had decided some time ago that events were going to proceed as they were going to proceed, and that her job now was to be the neutral witness the procedure required. Vess turned to Sorrel with the full weight of his professional displeasure. This declaration has consequences, he said. The magistrate's household has no claim once the declaration is confirmed, she said. Clause 41, subsection 7. I know the text. She looked at him with those pale gray eyes, and something in her bearing that I can only describe as the specific quality of a person who has spent a long time deciding what they were willing to settle for, and has finally decided the answer is nothing. He looked at me. And you confirm. Confirm, I said. Freely. Without coercion, I confirm. The corridor was quiet enough that you could hear the harmonic hum of the ship's cooling system cycling down in dock mode. Crador Vess looked at his portfolio. He looked at the captain. The declaration will be logged as contested, he said, with the tight precision of a man containing something large inside a small professional container. You understand that. Log it however you need to, I said. He made a notation. He closed the portfolio. He looked at both of us once more with an expression that I suspected he would not use in front of witnesses if he had remembered we were all witnesses. And then he turned and walked back down the boarding corridor without another word. Tull looked at me. She had the expression of a person who has watched a complicated situation resolve itself in a way she didn't plan for and isn't sure yet whether to be relieved or alarmed. "Legal proceedings will follow the ship," she said. "I know, Captain. I'm sorry for the complication." She looked at Sorel, then back at me. Then, unexpectedly, the coroner moved in something that wasn't quite a smile but was in the same family. Jessica's been telling me that the occupant of cabin 7 correctly identified an anomalous reading in the FT field generator for the last 6 weeks, she said. "She has a strong technical background," I said. Tull nodded once. "Log the declaration. The ship's record will show the welfare schedule." She picked up her own manifest and walked toward the dock authority office without looking back. Duco appeared from the cargo bay access. He'd been there the whole time, I realized, not coincidentally. He gave me a look that said I was right, and this was a mess, and he was glad all the same, all in one expression that took some years of human company to read correctly. He disappeared back into the cargo bay. The corridor was quiet. I looked at Sorel. She was standing a meter away from me, formal tunic, locks back, particular composure, of a person who has just done a thing that has no return. "Well," I said. "Well," she said. "There will be proceedings." "There will be proceedings," she agreed. "Possibly years, during which you'll be in a contested status. During which I'll be in a contested status. And the liaison is going to be extremely difficult." "He will," she said. "He has a very expressive portfolio." I looked at her. She had said that, a portfolio comment, nearly dry, almost wry. And I was startled for a second, and then I laughed. Actually laughed. The way you do when something catches you off guard. And she watched me laugh with those silver-gray eyes and something in them that was careful and new and a little like relief. "Sorel," I said. "Thomas," she said back. "Just my name. Just the first one." I held out my hand, the ordinary gesture the greeting offered. The thing I might have offered anyone at a door. She looked at it for a moment, and then she put her hand in mine, and the handshake lasted longer than handshakes do. Neither of us moving. Just the contact of it, the plain acknowledged wait. "I don't know how long the proceedings will take," I said. "Neither do I. I've got a posting on a return haul in 4 weeks if I want it. Would keep me in the system for the legal contact period." "That's a practical consideration." "It is," I said. "Shh. It's also the haul I was already considering before any of this." She looked at me with the text-reading attention she'd been using since day one in the doorway, making sure she understood correctly. "You read quickly," I said. "You notice things. You know more about how this ship's systems work than most people who've served on one. The return haul company takes non-crew technical consultants. You're asking if I want a job. I'm asking if you want something to do while the proceedings take however long they take." She was quiet for a moment. Outside the docking corridor, through the port observation window, I could see Tessivar Colony's primary landmass spread out under a pale morning sun. Big sky, flat terrain. A colony built itself from the ground up, with the particular stripped-down practicality of places that couldn't afford anything extra. Somewhere out in that flat terrain was a magistrate with a large household and a diplomatic claim that was currently being logged as contested. "Yes," she said. "I want a job." I released her hand. She didn't step away. We stood in the corridor of the Valdrin's Grace in dock silence. The harmonic hum fully faded now, the ship finally quiet, and I thought about the work order I'd been handed 87 days ago. Diplomatic, freight, Category 7, and the particular distance between that line and this moment. "I should tell you," she said, "that the right of declaration isn't a marriage clause. It's a companion clause. It doesn't require, it doesn't obligate." "I know what it says," I said. "I just want to be clear that I wasn't." Sorel. I waited until she looked at me directly. I read the clause 4 times. "I know what I confirmed." She held at that for a moment. The gray eyes were very steady. And behind them was the careful attention of a person deciding whether to trust the thing in front of them, or to keep holding the old distance. The door at 4 centimeters, the practiced composure. She chose. "Good," she said, "then we understand each other." "We do," I said. Outside, dock workers were beginning their cycles. Inside, the ship was settling into its port quiet. Somewhere aft, I could hear Jessica already pulling up technical logs, and in the galley, Marin making something that smelled, today, like actual spices. Picked up my access tablet from the corridor wall rack. I opened the welfare log. I looked at the last 87 entries. One per day, straight line of satisfactory, satisfactory, satisfactory. I changed the final entry to declaration confirmed, status resolved, welfare excellent. Then I closed the log and walked with her toward the Port Authority office, where the first of the proceedings was waiting, and where everything else was going to begin.